All right, welcome back on our WOW stage and welcome back, Enara. If I see Enara, welcome again.
Hi, thank you. Thank
So
you for
now
having
we're
me
going to
again.
run a panel called Metaverse. I leave you the stage. The stage is yours, and so you can present your guest. Okay? See you later.
See you soon. Hi, Sallyann. Hi, Mao.
Hi.
Hi.
So excited to be able to talk with you today. I'm thrilled. I mean, it's been several hours of incredible conversations, but I think this one I've been looking forward to the most. We're really living through such an incredible moment in time. A year ago, conversations about digital fashion, wearable tech, smart textiles, avatars, and just the metaverse at large were so niche. And I think with all the publicity around these topics and NFTs, digitization of identity, everyone is starting to think about the next evolution of the internet and how it will actually affect our industries. And our objective today is to share some of the thinking behind the evolving metaverse and the impact that it will have on our lives at large. So we'll hear today from two incredible speakers, Sallyann and Houghton, who leads fashion industry business development at Epic Games, which is a leading interactive entertainment company and provider of 3D technology. We're also joined by Liao, founder and CEO of Reblika, a character company developing high-end digital humans and 3D scanning tech. I'd like to just kind of reflect for a moment. I think after every distressing time, there's always a time of renaissance that follows. And the endurance of all of these global changes throughout the pandemic started to resurface several themes around digitization, such as sustainability, collective and individual freedom, prosperity, ownership, social responsibility, and other topics. And I think as software, hardware, and latency are improving, we're now getting to the place where the complexity of virtual worlds can actually be sustained. And we've already come so far, and we're still just at the beginning of what the metaverse will become. And before we dive in, I'd love to ask each of you to first define what the word or concept metaverse means to you, and how is it different from your definition of the internet? Sallyann, let's start with you.
Wow, thank you so much. Well, it's a huge concept to get your head around, to get your arms around, and it's ever evolving, and it doesn't. For all intents and purposes, it doesn't exist at the moment. And so the world that we're explaining, the world we're talking about, it could change. It's a vision that is ever changing. So I think that the easiest way to begin to communicate it is that it's a three-dimensional space. It has the interactivity of gaming as we know it now. It is persistent. It's not something that you would turn on and that would reset or sleep. And it's available for everyone. There's no cap on numbers. It would have events in it that you would schedule, but it would also just be there. And it would have a community essence. You could meet, you could experience, you could learn. It's everything that the internet is. It's everything that your community is. It's everything that the mall is. It's everything that you would want to encompass your life, to have within your life. And as I say, it's ever evolving. I think the plan is that it's fair and it's fluid. It has its own economy, and that it is created by its participants, so that there is a community ownership. No one person must own the metaverse. It must be something that is a collective. So that's kind of my beginnings of the vision, and I think that it kind of overlaps with lots of other people's vision. But there are differing views out there, which is good. It should be like that.
Absolutely. I mean, it's also amazing to get to hear your perspective from the perspective of Epic Games, which I think Unreal Engine defines so many different infrastructures and iterations of other people's visions as well. So I definitely love it being a place, or almost like a third place in addition to our work, and places where we hang out as it develops over time. Mao, I'd love to hear your perspective and your definition of the metaverse as well.
Well, I mostly agree with you at the end, and also I think there's not much I can add on top of that. But basically, indeed, we see it as been mentioned in sometimes movies like Ready Player One. Basically having like a very realistic gaming world. I also mentioned as a Second Life. That's kind of like attempt to be that, but I think it was a bit too early compared to what we can do now. And you also heard people calling it digital twins of the world and or the matrix. Yeah, all pointing toward a kind of like a alternative reality, but I don't see it as an alternative reality. I see it more as a coexist with the real reality where we can jump and between at any time, any moment, and it will continue to have its own life while you're sleeping. And that is, I think, for me, the metaverse. And I agree with you. It should not be owned by anyone. It should be open for the whole world. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say.
No,
I think
go
a lot
ahead,
of people. There has been a suggestion that the places that exist now are the metaverse, and I think that can't be true. It can't be true. In that the metaverse is an interconnected environment, and so there's no one game that can be the metaverse right now, because the metaverse must be all games interconnecting. You'd go into a space and you'd open a door and you'd go and see a concert, then you'd open another door and you'd play a game, and then you'd open another door, and it would be an environment that you'd arrange to meet your friends. And so I think that one of the key characteristics is that it's interconnected, and so any world that we have now, any virtual world that we have now, it can't be the metaverse because it isn't joined up yet. But that's the future, that's the plan, that's the dream.
Totally. I mean, I find it fascinating that both of you reference some of almost like cultural mementos, like art, books, movies, of films, and stories that we grow up with that end up influencing and inspiring us to actually build this future. And today, even though the Ready Player One or Snow Crash truly interoperable version of the metaverse is not here yet, I'd love to hear what inspired you to pursue this niche. What keeps you motivated to champion the vision for this technology to come to life as it's developing? So it's almost like takes a certain level of belief. Mao, I'd love to hear from you.
Oh, thank you. My vision is, I think that with the success of automation through AI and other advancements, people will become, I'm not saying redundant, and we will require less people doing the stupid jobs, and there will be a lot of people have a lot of time, doing nothing. So one thing I envision that in future that we can have our extension do some part of our work, and so you can spend time on other better stuff. But I can also imagine like a future where we can have a universal basic income that can really help people really pushing to choose what they really like to do. As an example of myself, I was never intended to become this digital human expert. I actually was intended to become an IT expert, but that never became my dream. And actually through Sideway and working on the game industry and film industry, I realized there's more than just what we have right now. And that is kind of pushing me towards this moment. So to come back to your, what do you think, and also why I'm doing this, I still think the digital human can be improved in that field. And I was saying, we crossed the many, blah, blah, blah. I don't think so, because if I can see it, it is still there. It will probably take a few more years, and with Epic MetaHuman, it was a huge, big steps toward the right direction. But that is still something I think we need to improve on in the future. But huge shout out to Epic that you guys did an amazing job. So the whole, that's kind of my thing. I think we should work toward a future that it's more collaborative, and also where the normal human can benefit from this, and not just creating this dystopia that one is afraid of these days, like Black Mirror episode, basically.
Yeah, I read a study once that said that it is because of films like Black Mirror or George Orwell's novels, that because we've seen those visions of the future in books and movies, that we're actively making it part of our mission and our purpose to actually avert those futures and summon something else. Sallyann, would love to hear your reason for being in the building out the metaverse.
I suppose, so I come from a content creation background, and I sort of started my days as a producer, producing films and commercials and print ads for luxury goods and fashion. And so kind of had this wonderful creative relationship with the fashion industry. And that was kind of woven through my whole career, really, you know, creative content and the fashion industry. And then there was this emergence of technology being part of the creation of media. And emerging tech kind of being part of our consumption of media. So whether it's AR or VR, and I found it fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And I loved the progression of 3D from being very much a 3D object and living inside a game world. And then suddenly 3D being photoreal and being, you know, a beautiful replica of the existing world, or something that has never been seen before, but so lifelike and so, you know, so beautiful. And I think that's one of the reasons why the fashion industry now has value in 3D, because beauty can be seen, and it's not just seen within a computerized world or a computerized aesthetic. And so that, you know, all of this journey for me was an appreciation, let's say, and a knowledge building. And then I joined Epic a couple of years ago. And within Epic, I've kind of grown into this role that is a conduit to the fashion industry because of my love and my previous interactions, whilst also learning everything that there is about Epic and the future of this space that I was very much passionate about and committed to. And then before you know it, you are in these virtual worlds, and you're looking at how whole industries can move into this space and how it can benefit them and how it can be creative and how it can embody beauty. And then you realize that if these spaces are our future, then one of the most important parts of them is identity. And how important it is that it's not just, we don't just build a space, but we build something that we can be part of. And the only, the way that we exist really is through our identity, through we are. And so it kind of brought all of these different worlds together, the fashion industry, or, emerging tech and technology, and then this kind of passion for identity and sort of showing your identity.
Yeah, I'd love to come back to the point that you just made around identity. I think both of you are specializing in the development of synthetic digital humans in different capacities. And globally, I think it's 3.2 billion people identify as gamers and are already comfortable with the idea of embodying virtual personalities. And humans have used tokens to represent ourselves for probably as long as games have existed, and we've been growing these identities and a virtual presence since we've ever had our first online profiles. So I think we're not just at this point augmenting our physical bodies, but also our minds. And Epic Games' recent announcement of metahumans, I think, was of technology that was meant for people with VFX specialized experience, is now available to other people and is democratized. So from your vantage point, what does this tool actually mean to the evolution of the digital identity, maybe perhaps even outside of gaming? What kind of experiences this can usher in, especially for creative industries?
Well, I think there's the way that I think I feel about it as, as just a human that is embarking into this space. As someone that has my own emoji that I designed to look like myself, that I share with my friends. Like, we want to present ourselves in this digital world. Like we have a want and a need, and so I think that digital humans and avatars are going to be really, really important to that, because it's part of who we are, and it's sharing our essence in this digital world. And then there's the metahuman side, and I suppose the Epic side, which is the metahumans is an almighty powerful tool that we are so excited to share, to democratize the creation of digital humans. And it's a creative tool, and therefore it is in the hands of the creator to do as they please, within their space. And so we are incredibly excited that many people are going to use it within their pursuit to make games, because that is their creative output. And many other people and many other Groups of people will use it within VFX, they'll use it within filmmaking. And then there'll be some people that will want to use it because they'll want to represent themselves in the digital world. And then, hopefully soon we'll be able to dress them, we'll be able to have accessories, we'll be able to embellish to a degree that isn't possible at the moment, that we would all love and like, and then we can be present in a digital world. But fundamentally, the MetaHumans, and this is why I think it is so powerful, is a tool for anyone and everyone. And it's incredibly easy to use. I had a play, and it's actually quite an emotional experience in that it's so powerful. And I'm not in any way a 3D operative. I've never worked on the box. And suddenly I was able to work in a piece of software, very powerful visual piece of software, and able to interact and change and produce an incredibly high level piece of 3D. And it's such an empowering experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mao, I'd love to hear your perspective on this as well. Sallyann, I think what you just described, it's like we've seen this happen with Instagram, where picture taking might have been reserved for someone who has the eye to be able to take a good photo, but with the assistance of filters, more people felt safer to actually share their work. So I think this is one of those steps that we're taking, that through this facilitation of being able to actually enter the space and be happy with the quality of the product is what's making people more excited to step into this. Mao, I would love to hear from you as well.
Well, to be really frankly and honest, I was a bit shocked when this announcement, because of course, one of our business is actually creating characters for people. But then I realized that it's creating characters, not just the outside. There's also the animation part that needs to be created and needs to be developed, and also creating a very bespoke people. Currently, we are in production of a very special DJ. He's world famous, and converting his performance into a virtual concept. And that's involving a lot of specific feature of his face that needs to be nailed. And I think first, yes, I was a bit afraid that it would put us out of business. But now I realize that we can use MetaHuman and actually kind of teach us and help us making 10 steps ahead. And I think that this is just showing the industry and also about the Metaverse, how powerful by working together and making everything accessible. It would be better than keeping everything for yourself, because that is not promoting the Metaverse in my vision.
Mm-hmm. It's just so exciting to me to know that this conversation is happening also at a fashion tech conference. Go ahead, Sallyann.
No, I was saying, I was just going to say that just back to the point about your fear of being put out of business, in that I know that a few people kind of had that, but the democratization of anything really is, I don't think it takes away the creative and the craft level of any expertise. And I think as a result that I think it allowed for, you guys as creators to do that huge swathe of hard slog in record time. So you could just get to your skill, that incredible craft and skill that you guys have and have honed over however many years of doing this, and then be able to apply that to the top layer and take what the software gives you to an absolute next level that's still very unique to you and your skill set.
I'm not afraid, because I think this in order to create a fully realistic human, it's not just the face that looks real, it has all the brain, the voice, the lips, everything has to be working perfectly in synergy, to make it a believable human. And although we're really close, but we're not there yet. So there's still a lot of things we can innovate in that area that can be, beneficial for everybody. Yeah.
Totally. I mean, both of you are also at the bleeding edge of innovation as well. And I think when other companies that don't specialize in this look at, listen to this conversation, they're probably thinking wow, I might be 10 steps behind. But I think what's really powerful is being able to learn from you and see that it is not that difficult to get started. But so if some companies have been, trying to ride out the waves of all the changes that the internet has thrown at us, what got you here to build your business won't get you there. So I think when you have to develop an appetite and almost like a stomach for innovation. So to me, innovation is a healthy relationship with risk. And when people in non-technical roles hear words like digital twins or virtual events or digital clothes, it could feel a bit scary to step into that. So what practical advice do you have for someone wanting to incorporate this type of technology into their work, especially if they are a creative?
From my perspective, that's kind of what I do all day, every day. Like I'm one of the luckiest human beings alive in that I get to speak to lots and lots of different people within the community, within the fashion community, and kind of learn more about where they are on their digital journey, and hopefully help them move forward. And I think everyone's different. Most people are keen to learn more. And so I think that you should definitely allow yourself time for R&D, allow yourself time for education, and to maybe experiment. And that, that experimentation can happen in the form of a proof of concept. It can happen in the form of just getting some hands-on experience of the technology in your own world, or maybe into an office environment. It doesn't have to be a huge investment to begin with. But I think that in order for you to be able to take calculated business risks, you have to have the best possible understanding of the technology and of the power of the technology, and then definitely act, because there's also a lot of people in the community that are talking and they are learning, but then they're not necessarily acting. And so you kind of have to get there like 70% of the way there with your knowledge base, and then you have to start making some decisions so that you can move forward. And because we're quite the fashion industry is very much a visual industry. It's kind of content driven in one way or another, whether the content is a show or it's a product or it's some kind of visualization of a product. Then I often will encourage people to do some kind of presentation, some kind of project, and whether that is an internal version of how should we share our digital assets, or whether it's more of an external, let's partner with someone and let's do something that we haven't done before. Let's create an interactive space. Let's do a virtual showroom. Let's speak to some people and create our own little game. Let's get in a game, kind of like doing and learning on the job. There's a lot to be said for it. I think action is good. And the world is so dense that you're beginning with a small little step in an interactive space or with some interactive assets is going to be really beneficial for you to take the next few steps.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so action over deliberation. That's always the answer. And also, so these are the two takeaways: action and collaboration. So definitely don't be afraid to ask for help. When we think of also the original dream of the internet, it is about democratization of information that would allow anyone to learn, to build, to contribute to the collective World Wide Web that we get to experience. And in addition to well-funded corporations that are building out the infrastructure and the layers needed for the metaverse to exist, the real architects really are the people who get to create and contribute to the content and the experiences that we all get to love. So globally, I think we still have quite a bit of work to do to give every person access to stable internet. What are some of the ways that the metaverse can promote accessibility and empower individual designers, fashion brands, and also non-Western countries? Mao, you can go next if you'd like.
I haven't thought about that part, to be honest. I mean, there's a lot of people we're thinking about the Western world and how to make that. That's where the money is, and it makes sense. But indeed, hopefully, I think we have to start with internet. I mean, basically, if those third world country doesn't have a proper internet connection, then this whole thing falls, And I think a lot of things we start to see these days is the race around 5G. I think 5G could be, that really help make the whole metaverse more accessible to the rest of the world. If that is not ready, then you can forget about the metaverse, because it's all about connectivity, right? So if we don't have infrastructure there's no way we can connect together. So I think that should be the first thing to improve. Yeah.
And I think what's exciting is that once you've got over the challenge of the internet, then I think that the metaverse begins to open up the marketplace. We have we have a competitive marketplace. We also have a slightly siloed marketplace, and there's an argument to be said that in many ways it's not a fair and fluid marketplace. Whereas I think that the plan is, and hopefully we all want the metaverse to have a much more open and fair and kind of flat market environment. So it means that whatever your country, whatever your background, whatever your beginnings are, if you have a good product, a digital product, whether it lives in the real world and a digital world, or whether it's just digital on its own, then you've got every chance of the rest of the world, not just your small community, but the rest of the world being able to access that and purchase and experience and share. And maybe your product is knowledge, and that knowledge can get further and wider, quicker. And I think that's the beauty of it, that just it becoming much more open.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And also, I think of the speed of innovation as well, as that being able to build out physical infrastructure to support learning centers takes so much longer than it is to build out internet infrastructure. So I feel like giving people access, to, of course, beginning with connection, but also access to these spaces, I think is going to be a huge step of actually giving countries outside of the Western Hemisphere an opportunity to compete in the global market. When we think of also the role of the brand and companies, and how has online and digital environments changed it over time, I think digital made companies kind of give up control over their brand narrative, because online, the brand is not what it says it is about itself, but what others say about the brand and how they describe it. There's a recent study by Ernst & Young that showed that purpose-led companies outperformed S&P 500 companies tenfold between years 1996 and 2011. So brands are also being asked to act at their level of experience and their level of influence, and to be more than just the products and services that they provide. In addition to that, if you look at physical craftsmanship and great materials that have been developed over time, those selling points don't necessarily translate into the metaverse the same way. So the brand's role is now not just to be a merchant, but to also be a leader within that space. So how can brands leverage the metaverse to not just transform their business, but to also adapt solutions that will truly impact our world for the better?
No, as I see it, look, I'm not a graduate from business school by any stretch of the imagination, but as I see it, what the metaverse can offer is it allows, on the different platforms that brands live now, from the high street through to e-commerce or on a billboard or wherever they're being accessed by their consumers, it's very much a siloed view of them, and a very distinctive. Each has their own language, and it's a kind of a piecemeal for the consumer at the moment. You kind of see what the brand looks like on a shelf, you see what it looks like on a billboard, you see what it looks like on a TV commercial, and then you kind of hear messaging from time to time. And you kind of have to piece it together. And sometimes brands get that right, and those pieces fit together beautifully, and it's very clear to a consumer who they are. And sometimes they don't. And sometimes that, the messaging is kind of muddied, and maybe that it's unfair that the consumer doesn't fully understand where this brand comes from. And I think the joy of the metaverse is that it is an interactive, or it will be an interactive 3D environment where brands can create fully immersive brand worlds, that in an instant you can be surrounded by what the brand represents, who the brand wants to be, how it wants to be seen. You can understand what's important to the brand. It can be, it can be there in full view, that they have a conscience in this area, and they care in this area. I think it can allow for consumers to have very easily have a very rich experience and a coming together with a brand, and then make choices, because it's as much the consumer's choice as it is the brand's leverage, and make choices about whether this is the right experience for them, this is the right company, this is the right messaging. But I think it will be so much clearer, because it'll be 360 in front of you, fully interactive, very dense, and so I think that allows brands to be clearer with the messaging, and hopefully, because there's a clarity, there will hopefully be an increase in in brands wanting to bond with their consumers in a meaningful way, and it not just be product placement, and it not just be I'm a billboard and I'm going to bother your eyesight, and there'll be much more meaningful interactions.
Wow, I think in some ways you almost create messengers that do that.
Yeah, I actually want to react a bit on what you said about I think the biggest mistake we can make is try to make an exact copy of our world, and we call it digital twin, and replicate that exact in the digital world with all the physical limitation of the real world. And also, for example, if you had to create a new mall, a digital mall, would you be the exact same way, position everyone? No, you would create an experience. Everyone can be at the front, have the best position. It doesn't have to be positioned way based on how and how it should be based on ideology and also your creativity. And the good example I see in real life is actually a brand called Monster, and I think they have really amazing looking stores in real life, more like a museum than a real store, and really promoting their creativity. I think that's what brands should do, creating experience and not like a physical copy of with the shelves and those clothes. No, that should not be there. And another thing I want to add on top of that is the whole virtual fitting. I think that's where maybe Epic can help. When they work with digital human, virtual fitting is a big thing. Everyone tries to solve the problem because it can reduce the amount of return rate, right? And that if we can use our own body measurement somehow and try out new clothes online and with our identity, that will also accelerate the whole metaverse and virtual identity. And also don't forget the whole business around avatars, direct avatars. What we see a lot these days. I think look at Fortnite. The skins that people are purchasing. So maybe in the future we can have a real sample or real clothing, but it will come with a digital version, so you can put it on your game character as well. So yeah, that's what I love that you're both
hinting. I love that you're both hinting on the fact that hybrid experiences can be actually incredibly powerful in this. Is that when people are thinking of a digital strategy, a lot of the times it's an amplifier for their existing toolkit, which is really a great news for people who have a physical business. And I think everything we just talked about sounds incredibly exciting, but I'm sure all of the technological changes and the shifts that we're talking about, we're still, we can't even imagine the types of transformation that is going to usher. And technology in many ways is a tool, the same way, just like fire is a tool. It can be an incredibly empowering thing. It can also be the very thing that burns something down. And I remember listening to an interview with the Twitter co-founder, Jack Dorsey, talking about regret. And he was asked, like, if you could do anything different with Twitter, he would have hired a psychologist to help him understand the impact of the like button and what it was going to do to the cultural, like social cultural context. And at the end of the day, real power, I think, lies in education and the choices that we get to make because of it, which I think is why we're all here for this conversation. So what are some of the long-term implications and potential drawbacks of the metaverse that you're thinking about?
I think that we do, and we've already touched upon it, but I think that we do need to be careful that we don't, it's not just about making mistakes, but making the same mistakes twice. I think that the replication of the familiar, just because it's familiar, we shouldn't replicate. And so I do worry that that there is or would be a push for let's build a store, let's have this experience, and that we don't take the creative time and the creative brain width that's needed to think of what are the new wave of experiences, what are the new waves of coming together, visually and experientially. How do we want to navigate this world, and how do we want to meet brands and meet other people? So I think that it would be incredibly limiting, and it would be a waste of the environment if we did try to replicate in most cases. And I also think that, in the world of fashion, I love the idea of buying something that I would wear in the virtual world and then having it in the real world. But I do feel a little bit sad if that is, if that is the way that most of us will navigate fashion in a virtual world, because I think what's so exciting is is having fashion that is not possible, having fashion that doesn't have to play by the rules of gravity and doesn't have to play by the rules of material and matter, and having that in the virtual space. So I think that we mustn't allow the real world to hold us back, and we must make sure that the metaverse is there as a positive experiential space, and in no way, bogged down by advertising and brand interactions that are not enriching. Like the metaverse should be an enriching space. We've all complained about Zoom fatigue. There should never be the phrase metaverse fatigue. It shouldn't be that kind of space. We shouldn't have those kind of interactions. It should take, it should be an uplifting environment.
Yeah. Mao, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, sure. I'm sure there's a lot of people thinking when we have finally realized the metaverse, would you still use your own face and your identity? I think a lot will not use their own face. Probably want to become the version of themselves, and that can also be misleading and can affecting and maybe even make all people sad. One thing I've been done in the past is a project called Sweetie, where we create a virtual girl to attract big pedophiles online. And this is a very, very big news a couple of years ago, to use a virtual girl to kind of like lure the pedophiles in. And that is showing the potential what can happen in the metaverse, that there will be some cybercrime, but how we deal with it is kind of decide if we end up in a dystopia or a better world. I think there's this kind of like controls might be needed in future, but right now we're basically in no one's land. There's no rules. We just start exploring the whole thing. But yeah, that would be a moment that we need kind of like a meta police.
Totally. I mean, I'm just encouraged that we're having this conversation early before the metaverse has arrived, so that we can keep these things in mind as we're designing these solutions. And we are coming to the close of our time, but as important as it is to also make data-driven decisions, and as all of us are running businesses, I think a leader's intuition is often very telling of the future that is to come. So if you could summarize in 1 to 2 sentences, what is your intuitive, maybe a bit of a half crazy prediction about what the metaverse can become in the next 5 to 10 years, what would it be? Mao, you can go first.
Maybe you can start first. Maybe you have
I'm getting there.
Sure. Yeah, I can get us started. I think like when we think of a world where we're able to exist, like you said, Sallyann, where there is no fatigue, I think it will become something that is just so seamless to enter and exit, instead of having to have your computer, have a workstation, and have to have the setup process. I hope it is so easy to access these spaces that we can do it on demand from wherever we are in the world, so that people have the freedom to actually move around. It's kind of hard to imagine how like the workplace can become truly decentralized, but I think the metaverse will make it possible.
No, I love that. That's great. I also hope that we've talked a lot about the metaverse, but I hope that the metaverse allows for the world, the real world, to benefit, let's say, from the energy and the efforts that we focus on the metaverse and working and playing and being in the metaverse. I hope that then the wider world can leverage us being more sustainable, can leverage us having more of a digital existence, and so that the two can have a real balance. Yeah, hopefully the metaverse can help create the balance that we don't have at the moment, and there can be just enough overlap so that we exist beautifully within the real world, and it's something that we can really flourish within, and the world can flourish around us. But then we also have the metaverse for this additional layer of experience and interactivity and collaboration and creation, and this extension of our identity, and it can be a really positive experience.
Thank you.
I have found I'm more approaching from the philosophical side, and I think that is I think one reason why we're pursuing this metaverse is also try to create a kind of like heaven. We're all gonna die one day. Imagine if you can leave something behind, your legacy that live forever. Imagine my digital twin will continue to live in the physical world, there's no space for that. It doesn't scale up, right? And getting full, right? But in digital world, there's no limit, space and oxygen and resources. So I think that is what I hope to see, that will become a legacy of everyone in the world.
Wow, I love that we're ending on such an existential question. What is us? What is it? What are we? Can we live after? Is there afterlife? And is the metaverse it? I think I just, there's so many questions still yet to answer. And as it comes for the fashion industry, I think this is such a fertile ground for innovation and creativity. And we're still just at the beginning of this. Thank you both so much for today's conversation, helping us expand our imagination, ask better questions, and also just to see connections where we may have seen once borders or just difficulties in terms of how to enter and break through into the space. Thank you also for the work that you do. I think it is not only exciting, but it's definitely a challenge. So seeing your passion and getting to learn from you today was really inspiring to me. And I hope also to the listeners. If anybody enjoyed this conversation, please give our panelists a follow on LinkedIn to stay in touch and follow their work. Thank you both.
Thank you. Wonderful job.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.